The mere word platinum conjures up the image of the very best. In the music industry, a platinum album has gotten 1 million sales, double that of a mere gold album. Platinum credit cards get the best benefits. Heck, platinum membership in anything always represents the highest tier. Oddly, platinum seems to have become the gold standard of standards. I guess that shouldn't be a surprise. Platinum is 30 times rarer than gold in the Earth's crust, but the value of platinum was not always recognized. When Spanish conquistadors came upon platinum in the rivers of the New World, they just assumed that it was merely gold that hadn't yet ripened. They gave it the derisive name platina, little silver. It's history that deserves to be remembered.
Platinum isn't just rare in that it is uncommon in the Earth's crust, it is very difficult to get to. Platinum is one of the densest naturally occurring elements. The high density means that it is significantly heavier and more compact than everyday metals like iron or copper, and denser than common precious metals, even like gold and silver. A cube of platinum, about 6 inches square, weighs approximately 165 pounds, and that means that the already rare element largely sank towards the Earth's core when the planet was forming, making the mineable portion exceedingly rare. In fact, experts assume that most mineable platinum arrived on the Earth after its formation via meteor impacts. Only roughly 10,000 tons of platinum have been extracted in all of human history. Combined, that would produce a cube of only about 23 feet a side, a little more than 12,000 cubic feet, roughly the size of a good-sized living room. Platinum is also very difficult to manipulate. It has very high melting point, 3,214 degrees Fahrenheit. The density, hardness, and extremely high melting point make it exceptionally challenging for jewelers to work with. That's why platinum doesn't, for the most part, appear in the ancient record. While some scholars have suggested that the Greek metal called electrum may have referred to platinum, that metal has been determined to be an alloy of gold and silver. Another suggestion is that a mention by Pliny the Elder of a heavy white substance found on the sands of Portugal and Galatia might have been referring to platinum, but most scholars agree that he was likely referencing tin. In fact, there is no real indication that ancient Greeks or Romans were aware of the element at all, both because it doesn't tend to naturally occur in the Mediterranean basin and they lack the furnace technology to melt it. Nor is there any sign that it was recognized in China or the Far East. There was, however, some use of platinum in the ancient world. At least a handful of items from ancient Egypt, produced as early as 1200 BC, contained platinum. Alison Withy notes on the webpage Julipedia that a 1901 analysis by French chemist Marcellin Berthaud found that one of the silver-colored metals used to decorate a 7th century BC object called the Casket of Thebes, associated with Princess Shenepupet, was native platinum mixed with small quantities of gold and iridium. However, Withy explains, Berthaud believed the use of platinum by the Egyptians was not intentional, but accidental, as platinum was a natural component of the ores imported from Nubia. Jack M. Ogden noted in a 1971 edition of the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology that platinum and related metals are quite commonly associated with gold in alluvial deposits throughout the world. And it's generally assumed that ancient Egyptians were not knowingly working with platinum, but rather it was a natural impurity found in gold that they had imported. Given its characteristics, it would not be a surprise that the ancient peoples were generally unable to separate or deliberately manipulate platinum, but that is not universally the case. There are many examples of platinum jewelry from the Lalita culture, which thrived in what is the modern-day Esmeraldas region of Ecuador between 600 BC and 200 AD. While, as was the case in Egypt, the inclusion of small amounts of platinum in some items that are primarily gold or gold and copper alloys might simply be impurities, David A. Scott and Warwick Bray of the University of London's Institute of Archaeology explain in a 1980 edition of the journal Platinum Metals Review that several objects contain platinum in significant amounts and show the deliberate and careful workmanship employed in using sintered gold and platinum alloys. Bray concluded in a 1971 edition of the Proceedings of the Royal Anthropological Institute that there is a great deal of evidence for the successful casting and working of gold and platinum in the Lalita culture. The exact dating of these items can be difficult. As Scott and Bray explain, documented pieces are very few, and most of these specimens were obtained by purchase from guaqueros, professional treasure hunters and tomb robbers, who possess generations of expertise in finding ancient mounds and cemeteries. The exact process by which this prehistoric culture worked a metal that has a melting point over 3,000 degrees is also difficult to answer. As Scott and Bray write, because no workshop sites have as yet been excavated, metallurgical equipment such as blowpipes, crucibles, and molds may be underrepresented. While the exact process used by the Lalita people is unknown, the alloys were almost certainly made via sintering, a manufacturing process that transforms powdered materials into a solid, dense part by applying intense heat and pressure, without fully melting the material. Sintering would have allowed the ancient jewelers to deliberately manipulate platinum without a furnace hot enough to melt the metal. Experiments by Danish engineer Paul Bergso, published in the journal Nature in 1936, suggest that small grains of platinum were mixed with a little gold dust in small portions placed upon a piece of wood charcoal. When the gold runs, it will coat the grains of platinum with gold. The grains are simply soldered together. If the piece is now further heated by means of the blowpipe, let us say, the following will take place. A portion of the fused gold permeates the platinum, and simultaneously a little of the latter is dissolved into the molten gold. Once the gold and platinum are soldered together, the mixture becomes soft enough to hammer. Begso explains by alternatively forging and heating it, it is possible to gradually build up a homogeneous mixture. The process was used, Begso explains, obviously with the intention of producing white alloys. This is a tedious and ingenious process, certainly a sign of the extent of human ingenuity, but it did have its limits. Bergso writes all of the specimens found are small, which is natural since they cannot be larger if they are to be exposed to the maximum degree of heat that can be produced from a bit of charcoal in a blowpipe. It is interesting that this pre-Columbian culture was the first people in the world to successfully work platinum. Their ability to manipulate this metal was historically and technologically monumental, proving a mastery of science and chemistry that predated European rediscovery by over 1,500 years. Sometimes history provides clues as to what has been lost, and reminds us that more history has been forgotten than remembered. In this case, the Tumac-Lalita culture lost social cohesion, appears to have dispersed between 350 and 500 AD, possibly as a result of natural disasters, as they were located along one of the most active fault lines in the world. The dispersed descendants of the culture were further wiped out in the 16th century following the Spanish arrival. By the time that the Spanish came looking for precious metals, the technology for sintering gold-platinum alloys had been lost. And that is where the story takes an odd turn. The Spanish found the metal, but they did not recognize its value. The first European mention of platinum may have been by Italian scholar and physician Julius Caesar Scaliger in his 1557 work Esoteric Training, in which he noted a metal found in Darien, roughly what is today Panama, which no fire nor any Spanish artifice has yet been able to liquefy. If he was indeed referencing platinum, and it was indeed a metal unknown to Europe, the reference does not seem to have been recognized as important at the time. Historian Peter van der Kroot explains in his online history of the elements called Elementomology and Elements Multidict that the origin of the name platinum came when, by the end of the 17th century, the Spanish conquistadors invaded the Choco region, now Colombia. They started developing the river soil looking for gold, and to their big surprise, they found some gray-looking beads together with the gold. They called those little silvery beads platina, meaning small silver, diminutive of plata, meaning silver. They became known as patina del Pinto, that is, granules of silvery material from the Pinto River, a tributary of the San Juan River in the Choco region of Colombia. Elizabeth Raffel explains on the jewelry website Stellar Blog that the conquistadors discarded it with no idea that it was rare and valuable. Some thought it was unripe gold, put it back in the mine or ground to ripen, believing that it would yellow with age. Steve Wojcik writes in a 2019 article in the journal Coin Age, when the Spanish did manage to separate platinum from gold, they discarded it as waste. During the early 1600s, workers at the Santa Fe de Bogota Royal Mint in the present-day Colombian capital city of Bogota dumped hundreds of pounds, perhaps even several tons of patina into the Rio Bogota, where it remained for several centuries. The jewelry website White Flash notes, once again, platinum mysteriously disappears from history. But little silver was gaining scientific recognition. In 1735, Spanish sea captain and scientist Antonio de Eloa encountered patina in gold mines while participating in a French geodetic expedition in Ecuador. At the time, he noted that several of the mines had been abandoned on account of the platina, a substance of such resistance that when struck on an anvil of steel, it is not easy to be separated, nor is it calcinable, so that the metal enclosed within the obdurate body could not be extracted without infinite labor and change. Gold mines were literally being abandoned by the Spanish for having too much platinum. In 1748, he published his expedition account, Historical Accounts of the Voyage to South America, which contained the first published, rigorous scientific observations of platinum. He is widely credited with introducing platinum to the European scientific community. But the metal was still not recognized as a separate metal or element. That process was possibly started in 1741 when an English ironsmith named Charles Wood acquired some platina while living in Jamaica. He did some experimenting and became convinced that platina was an entirely new metal. He passed his samples to his brother-in-law, a physician named William Brownrigg, who did some experiments of his own before writing to English scientist William Watson in 1750. I take the freedom to enclose to you an account of a semi-metal called patina de pinto, which, so far as I know, have not been taken notice by any writer on minerals. Watson then took the results before the Royal Society. The following year, in 1751, Swedish chemist Henrik Theophil Scheffer gave the first scientific description of the metal. One, that it is a metal hard but malleable, but of the hardness of malleable iron. Two, that it is a precious metal of durability like gold and silver. Three, that it is not any of the 6 old metals, since first it is wholly and entirely a precious metal, containing nothing of copper, tin, lead, or iron, because it allows nothing to be taken from it. It is not silver, nor is it gold, but it is a 7th metal among those which are known up to now in all lands. Scheffer discovered that when combined with arsenic, the metal could be made malleable at lower temperatures. At this point, the platina in Europe was exclusively coming through Spain. You might think that Scheffer's discovery that the metal could be worked when heated with arsenic would change the way that the Spanish crown dealt with the metal. And it did, but not for the reason that you might expect. Metallurgists soon realized that alloying patina with gold changed its weight and color very little, and so began adulterating Spanish coinage with platinum and pocketing the displaced gold. Yes, the metal we see as so valuable today was used to adulterate gold coins. To prevent this counterfeiting, in 1758 the Spanish banned trade in and personal possession of platinum under penalty of death. To combat counterfeiting, Spanish ships were ordered by royal decree to dump stockpiles and confiscated platinum into the ocean. As the counterfeiting continued, the Spanish crown began offering a bounty. Thus, Rock and Jim magazine explains, giving the metal its first formal valuation. And there's government for you. Rock and Jim explains, the crown later secretly debased its own gold coinage with platina, using these special issues to settle foreign debts. Despite recognizing it as an element, Europeans still couldn't easily work with platinum due to its extraordinarily high melting point. In 1783, French chemist Pierre-François Charbonneau, working under royal patronage in Spain, unlocked a secret powder metallurgy process to refine platinum into a workable, malleable form. To celebrate, King Carlos III of Spain commissioned a massive 2-kilogram platinum chalice presented to Pope Pius VI. Larry Gedney of the Geophysical Institute of the University of Alaska Fairbanks explains in 1985, with this accomplished, Spain, which still held a monopoly on the world's supply of platinum in Colombia, suddenly saw virtue in the previously despised metal. In 1778, King Charles of Spain decreed by royal edict that platinum was to be worked exclusively for His Majesty, and that all subjects who possessed samples were to hand them over without payment. He also demanded that his scientists work in absolute secrecy to protect their discoveries in platinum research from duplication. Charbonneau's breakthrough allowed for the creation of beautiful luxury items, snuff boxes, and scientific equipment. This output established the Spanish monopoly and a period of rapid platinum production known as the Spanish Platinum Age. But the monopoly wasn't complete. Raw platinum was sourced through covert trade networks. When French royal goldsmith Marc-Étienne Janety fashioned several platinum pieces for Louis XVI in 1783, the king declared platinum as the only metal fit for kings. Janety's platinum sugar bowl is now housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, an example of early royal affinity for the rare metal. A greater understanding of the metal also developed. In the early 1800s, English chemist William Hyde Wollaston and Smithson Tennant showed that platina was not a single element, as previously thought, but a natural alloy of several elements. What was once thought to be a single metal showed different properties depending upon the composition of these similar elements. After isolating and identifying palladium in 1802 and rhodium, iridium, and osmium in 1804, they named the parent metal platinum after platina. Platina's last elemental component, ruthenium, was discovered and isolated in 1844. Platinum was already playing a role in scientific instrumentation, but one particular role was critical. In 1795, in the wake of the French Revolution, France created the metric system of weights and measures. Janety, who had fled during the Revolution, was recalled to Paris to create the standard kilogram weight out of platinum. Platinum was the metal of choice for the task, as its durability, once the reason it was so despised, meant that it would not wear away and corrupt the standard. This original platinum cylinder is kept at the International Bureau of Weights and Measures in Paris. The French Revolution would, however, spell the end of the Spanish Platinum Age. The platinum industry in both Spain and France was disrupted by the Napoleonic Wars, especially Napoleon's invasion of Spain in 1808. Gedney notes that as a consequence, the techniques which had been painstakingly developed for handling platinum were lost for many years. The Spanish Empire began to collapse, and Ecuador won independence in 1822. By then, the supply from Ecuador was largely depleted. But in 1824, large deposits of platinum were found in Russia's Ural Mountains, and Russia quickly became the world's leader, supplying 92% of the world's platinum. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Gedney writes, as Spain had done before, Russia declared a state monopoly, forbidding the export of the unrefined metal and limiting all refining to the St. Petersburg Mint. Russia did not, however, achieve its own platinum age. In 1828, Nicholas I ordered the minting of platinum coins. Hundreds of thousands of 3-ruble coins containing 10 grams of pure platinum, 6-ruble 20-gram coins, and eventually 12-ruble coins containing 40 grams of platinum entered circulation. But the coins did not create the wealth that the Tsar had hoped. Gedney explains, it must have come as a bitter surprise to Nicholas that nobody in the world market wanted to trade for his coins. This situation must stand as one of the classic examples of all time that having a monopoly on, say, blivets doesn't necessarily mean that people will beat a path to your door. Russia did not learn this lesson until it used up almost 500,000 troy ounces of platinum in an effort to make it a medium of exchange comparable to gold and silver. The coins were withdrawn from circulation in 1846. It would be more than 120 years into the 1970s before platinum coins would again be struck. Platinum continued to find scientific uses, however, some because of its hardness and high melting point, the very characteristics that had originally made it seem useless, some because it turned out to be a highly efficient oxidation catalyst. Its uses in laboratory instruments, and particularly crucibles used for high-temperature experiments, first drove the value of platinum per ounce above that of silver in the 1850s. Better methods of melting and working the metal made it more viable, although still challenging to work with, for jewelry making. Throughout the 19th century, its exceptional durability, brilliant white luster, and hypoallergenic purity enhanced its value. Voynich writes that by 1905, combined jewelry and industrial demand had driven platinum's price above that of gold. Breaking the gold price barrier earned platinum worldwide acceptance as a bona fide precious metal. It was worn by royalty and worked by the most famous jewelers in the world, Cartier, Tiffany, Fabergé. With he writes, platinum jewelry and ornament became a major status symbol of the Edwardian period. Platinum remained popular through the 1920s and 30s in Art Deco jewelry. The discovery in 1924 of the world's largest deposits in South Africa fueled the mass applications of the modern world. South Africa today produces roughly 3/4 of the world's platinum. But the metal, whose value had changed so often, faced another change. The Second World War. Owing to its industrial uses, it was declared a strategic material by the United States War Production Board, and its use in jewelry making was banned. It was largely replaced by white gold in jewelry making, taking years after the war to recover its place.
By any standard, the story of platinum is extraordinary. Once considered to be so worthless that it was literally thrown overboard into the ocean, today it's the top-of-the-line credit card. And while today the raw cost of platinum per ounce is actually slightly lower than that of gold, the difficulty in working platinum means that platinum jewelry usually costs a little bit more. And while gold is still much more common than platinum in the jewelry industry, platinum is in about a quarter of the engagement rings that are sold today. And platinum is once again being struck as coins and as bars. But actually, the vast majority of the roughly 170 to 200 metric tons of platinum produced each year go to industrial uses. Virtually every modern car has a few grams of platinum in the catalytic converter. Heart pacemakers almost always use platinum because it is durable, it doesn't corrode easily, and it's highly conductive as the leads to keep people alive. And those same properties make it valuable for our future because while platinum is clearly a part of our present, it is an important part of space technology, from fuel cells to propulsion systems to sensors to shielding. I think we can guess that platinum will not just be a part of our past and our present, but will be part of what carries us into the future. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of The History Guy, and if you did, please feel free to like and subscribe and share The History Guy with your friends. And if you also believe that history deserves to be remembered, then you can support The History Guy as a member on YouTube, a supporter on our community at Locals, or as a patron on Patreon. You can also check out our great merchandise shop or book a special message from The History Guy on Cameo.